many ways and then cut off in so many ways. Knocked down in the streets of Chicago at a convention. Students pushed away. Well, as a little kid, that affected me powerfully. Now, I grew up in a progressive family. My great-grandfather was the village president of Blue River, Wisconsin. From 1900 to 1937. The proudest moment of his life was renaming the main street, and you go out to Blue River, you'll see this, Lafala. And you see this runs in the family. My mother, I was over at the Bernie Sanders rally in Madison last Saturday, and I was wandering around talking to people, interviewing folks. I got up toward the front row, way up at the front of the thing, and there's my mom sitting there. So, but as kids, you know, something connected all these things for me. And it was that 1968 primary season in Wisconsin, and the aftermath of that. And so, a couple of years later, Ted Kennedy came down to the UAW Local 72 Hall in Kenosha. And my dad said, well, we're going to go see Ted Kennedy. So we headed down. We've been to Kenosha for just about every political thing ever. So we go down to Kenosha. We get to the UAW Local 72 Hall. It's huge. It's almost as big as this room right here. All people almost as good. Trade unionists, progressives. There's Ted Kennedy. And they didn't have a microphone. They had thousands of people on. They had no microphone. They didn't need, somehow it hadn't worked out. They weren't as sophisticated as Nate did. And so, you know what Kennedy said? I don't need a microphone. I can talk to these thousands of people right here. Won't be any problem at all. He says you got to project. And so, brothers and sisters, I've always learned that lesson. I prefer to project rather than to have some piece of technology get between you and me. Because when I am with Wisconsin progressives, I'm not having some speech. It's not some TV thing. It's not some microphone thing. When I am with Wisconsin progressives, I am with my family. I am with the people I love. I am with something That's how we got to think about it. When they attack our progressive values, they're not attacking some policy. They're not even attacking something historic. They are attacking who we are. That is what is great about this state. What is great about this state is that 150 years ago, more than that, in the Civil War, which was, I'm pretty opposed to, well, I'm a Quaker, so I'm pretty bad on wars. I'm opposed to most of them. But if you're going to have to fight about something, I think fighting to end the original sin of human bondage is a pretty good idea. Now, in that Civil War, it did not go well. First years of the Civil War were rough. All the generals, most of the generals, it's an odd thing about military-industrial complexes. All the generals, they generally went to fight with the South. So the North was left with very limited opportunities, very limited possibilities. Finally, after everything else had failed, and people were talking about compromise. They were talking about, well, maybe we can negotiate a peace. Maybe we can negotiate with human bondage. Maybe we can negotiate some sort of settlement with slavery. Well, Lincoln had one last shot. He went to a guy from Galena, Illinois, Ulysses S. Grant. And Ulysses S. Grant was not considered to be the greatest general. He wasn't considered to be a perfect guy. But Ulysses S. Grant was willing to take charge of the military. That's the interesting thing. He said he had to raise his own units. He had to have more soldiers. He had to bring people into this struggle. And you know where many of the soldiers who fought with Grant came from? Right over that line from Galena, from Lafayette County and Grant County and Iowa County and Vernon County, up over into Dane County and Rock County. Took these soldiers, young men, from all these small farm towns. And I know I see these histories of the Civil War, and it says, oh, well, they just fought to keep the Union together. Because they were so concerned about losing Alabama. I want to tell you something. I was blessed to grow up in a family very tied to this history. And these people, they knew what they were fighting for. They knew they were fighting to end a sin. They knew they were fighting against an original sin of the American experiment. And if you ever want to see the greatest statue to the Civil War dead, it's not in Washington, it's not in New York, it's not in some big hill someplace. It's down at the Grant County Courthouse. Everybody know where the Grant County Courthouse is? That's right. Anybody from Grant County here? That's right, brother. My great-grandfather served on the Grant County Board longer than he was village president of Blue River. Served out of John Blaine. Down in that courthouse square. You go over to the corner of the square. It's all faded now. You can barely see the front of it. You got to kneel down on that grass and look at it. You got to touch it with your hands. It's the first statue to the Civil War. Not to the Civil War dead, but to the Civil War struggle, to the point of the struggle. The Grant County Boys got they put it up in 1866. And you know what it is? It's two strong African American hands. Two strong African American hands raised up with clenched fists. And white hands helping, pulling from each side. And then above it, the broken chains flying into the air. That was why Wisconsinites went to fight in that war. It wasn't to kill people. It wasn't to, some political concept. It was to break those chains. And the Wisconsin Progressive Movement was founded in those values, in those ideals. Not to have another war. The Wisconsin Progressive Movement is largely an anti-war movement. But it was to understand that we, the people of this state, could lead the entire country in the right direction. We could lead away from slavery, away from the subjugation of women, away from the denial of people of color, away from the denial of democracy itself. We could open up this democracy and make it something real. That's what Robert M. LaFollette learned when he was a little boy down in Primrose Township in the corner of this county. Robert M. LaFollette, his dad was missing, died young. Robert M. LaFollette's mom was bringing him up, case of a single mother. She ultimately remarried, but when he was young, she had things to do, so she would take him as a little boy. She would leave him at the general store with the wounded veterans of the Civil War. All these vets sitting around, and LaFollette would sit there as a little boy. That was his babysitters. Guys who'd lost legs and arms, had been badly bruised and damaged in that war. And they would tell the stories of their struggle, not war stories. Stories of moral superiority. No, we're not, nobody can be superior. No. They would tell them Wisconsin was superior. Wisconsin led this country. Wisconsin, if there was a fight, they went to the front line. When Hans Christian Haig raised the Norwegian units to fight in the Civil War, when Hans Christian Haig raised the units to fight, they said, well, we're going to take our orders in Norwegian. Why will we do that? Because if somebody speaking English tells us to retreat, we won't go back. Got a statue of Hans Christian Haig right out in front of the Capitol. You understand this? That's what LaFollette was raised in. And you know what they taught LaFollette as a little boy? They taught him that you didn't have a responsibility just to lead. You didn't have just a responsibility just to be a public official. You're a public official in Wisconsin. Your responsibility is to solve the problems of the nation and the world. That this place would be what Brandeis referred to it as, a laboratory of democracy. The place that would lead the rest of the country out of the darkness into the light. In LaFollette's era, out of the darkness and into the light, my friend Robert Craig knows this, out of the darkness into the light meant to understand that the struggle against physical bondage must be extended to the struggle against economic bondage. When we take people and put them in situations where they cannot live a decent and full life because we don't give them enough resources. Well, in a situation like that, we got to rise up and write new laws. We got to shape new policies. We have to have new ways of doing things. What did LaFollette fight for? Under the great influence of his wife, Belle Case LaFollette, right up front, for women's rights. Because you cannot have a democracy if half the people don't get to vote. That's not democracy. Don't let anybody ever tell you that. You deny the right to vote to half of humanity, you do not have democracy. Period. When LaFollette ran for president in 1924. Why did he run for president in 24? Just because, I'd like the opportunity to be president of the United States? No. The Ku Klux Klan had infiltrated both the Republican and the Democratic parties. The Follett said, this is the point. After all my life as a Republican, I leave the Republican Party. Because if the Klan has any influence here, I don't want to be a part of it. First candidate for President of the United States in this country who had the active support of African American groups, the AFL-CIO, and the Socialist Party, and a whole bunch of Republicans. Robert M. Follett, 1924. So we're fighting against subjugation of women. We're fighting against subjugation of people of color. We're fighting for democracy itself, and it must be an economic democracy, not merely a political democracy. So much good came of all that. This is a wonderful state. Unfortunately, we've had in the last few years a pretty ugly ride. Nobody should deny that. Nobody should lose sight. Nobody should lose sight of what has happened to this state in the last 5 or 6 years. But I'm so glad to be out with you folks. I'm so glad to be here. First off, you're here. You understand how important that is? You're here. This woman's here. I love this woman. Okay? Check this out. Did you see her? Did you see the front of this? In my book. I did. I wrote about her in the book because I was up at the Capitol. And don't change anything if I got it wrong, okay? Because this is what's so beautiful about our state. It's what's so beautiful about all you being here. It's what's so incredibly wonderful. Two things. Number one, anybody who thinks this is the worst times we've been through, I tell you, we've been through bad times before. Joe McCarthy got elected in 1946. He served until 1957. That was 11 years. It's a horrible time. It's embarrassing to me to this day. When I go and talk about how great Wisconsin is, this morning I was tweeting, it's snowing, it's great, Wisconsin's the best place in the world. People always say, yeah, Wisconsin sounds really great, but what about McCarthy? So, no, we've screwed up before, there's no doubt about it. But this period we've been through has been very, very rough. But what makes me absolutely confident about our state, and absolutely confident about this moment we are in, is that when I went up to that Capitol, on that first day after Walker did his anti-labor law, and remember the Follett and Wisconsin Progressives always pro-labor, always giving unions rights. Gaylord Nelson, first act when he was new governor in 1959, giving bargaining rights to public employees. That's where it came from. It's a progressive tradition. So I go up to that Capitol. The first few days there's hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Most of you were there, probably all of you. But one day I'm walking around the Capitol, and it was snowy and it was cold. It wasn't perfect. And here I see this woman walking along with this. It was actually a smaller sign, wasn't it originally? No. This was here. Okay. I remember it as much more humble. But I saw that and I thought to myself, this is why we are the greatest state, because even when horrible things happen to us, we make fun of it. And the truth of the matter is, as bad and tough as the last 5 years have been, 5, 6 years have been, and as especially harmful as they have been to people of color, to immigrants, to folks who are often pushed to the side in our politics and in our governments, as rough as they have been, we've soldiered through. We've struggled through all this. We gathered here today on the eve of an amazing moment. We're going to have a Wisconsin primary on Tuesday. I have not come to tell you how to vote. And I'm not. That's true. I want to make a big deal about this, because Eugene Victor Debs, right? Great radical leader. You know what Eugene Victor Debs said? If I could lead you to the promised land, I wouldn't do it, because if I could lead you in, somebody else can lead you out. Now my job to tell you how to vote. It's my job to tell you to vote your heart, to vote your soul. Do not let anybody make you into a pundit. Don't let anybody make you think that it is your job to read a poll or to think about, some strategy or what happened in Nevada or what's going to happen someplace else. That is not your job as a Wisconsinite. Your job as a Wisconsinite is to lead the rest of the country, to put down a marker for something better, not to follow. Don't you dare be a pundit. You be a Wisconsinite. You vote for what you believe in. And this is the interesting thing. When you vote for what you believe in, I got a feeling that we're going to do what we are so good at. If you have ever been at a tailgate party a little bit late, or a tavern on a Saturday night in Wisconsin, we're awfully darn good at wrecking things up. And I just have a feeling we're about to wreck up the whole presidential race. Oh, it's so intense, it's so busy, it's so bitter. I'm saying, no, I'm feeling very Wisconsin right now. They send us a bunch of candidates, we sort them out just fine. And I would tell you, I'm not again telling you how to vote, but in case any of you were going to vote for Donald Trump, you're going to be in a minority. And frankly, I can't figure out the difference between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. That's for other smarter, better people than me to do, but that's fine too. You know, you could. I just happen to think neither of them is going to be president of the United States. I do happen to think that whoever the next president of the United States is going to be somebody profoundly influenced by the experience of this campaign and by coming through Wisconsin. And I think the next president of the United States, I do believe this. And again, I'm not trying to point things here. I want to make his own decisions. But I have a feeling the next president of the United States might even know the name of the college. They might think it means something. And this is an important reality, because the reason we started a little bit early is in about 2 minutes, I gotta leave. I love you. I hate to leave you. No, you do. It's getting lined up. But I gotta leave because I gotta go over to some dinner with my wife and Melissa Sargent and my friend Marcy Kaptur, the longest serving woman in Congress. She's flying over from Ohio, and Al Franken, and Hillary Clinton, and Bernie Sanders. I talk about it, because that's what I do. I talk. My mother says that. So I got to go over to that event. It's going to be very elite, very important. Lots of people talking, a lot of politics and all this stuff. But you know what? This is my opinion. I would close off with just my personal opinion. In addition to saying how much I love you. Where did Charlie Uphoff go?
He just walked out.
Loser. All right. I love Charlie the best. John Pack right behind him. I love him just as much. But there are so many people in this room I adore. And the reason I love you, and I'd say this, I have no qualms about this. This is not a hard thing to say. The reason I love you is because you're good Wisconsinites, you're good progressives, you get the whole point of this thing. And because you're good Wisconsinites and you're good progressives and you get the whole point of this thing, you all understand that the most important election on Tuesday is not the election, not the primaries for President of the United States. I'm not going to convince you. I know I'm not going to succeed in convincing maybe Chris Matthews or Jake Tapper or one of these people about, I don't even know if I can convince my editors at The Nation that the most, I think I could convince the editors at the Cap Times. But I know who all I can convince of this. But I'm telling you this because I'm in this room, because I know this is true with you. The most important election on Tuesday is not the Republican primary for president. It's not the Democratic primary for president. The most important election this Tuesday is for the great Supreme Court of this state. I'll arm wrestle anybody. I'm going to win that one. I'll put my $5 on the table. God, don't bet, because as a Quaker I can't do it, but I can at least pretend. And I'll tell you something. It is the most important election in this state, not just this spring, but this year. Because Wisconsin progressivism wasn't about ideology. It wasn't about saying, although there's a progressive ideology to be sure. It wasn't about politics. It wasn't about parties. My great-grandfather was born a Lincoln Republican. He became a LaFollette progressive. He died as a Democrat, and he said he never once changed his opinion. this from my heart. This is not about parties. This is not about ideology. Wisconsin progressivism was about a faith in democracy, real democracy that everybody was a part of. And it was about a faith in the rule of law and institutions that were run for the people, not for the powerful. Above all, Robert M. LaFollette was a lawyer, and Belle Case LaFollette was a lawyer. I believe the first couple ever to graduate from the University of Wisconsin Law School. And Belle was the smarter one. No, that's true. Robert M. LaFollette would say that. But the fact of the matter is, Robert M. LaFollette was a lawyer. He was a district attorney. He revered the courts. He revered the judiciary. He challenged it and objected when it did wrong. He wanted to reform it at times, but he revered the rule of law. And in this state, we have seen the rule of law assaulted by politicians and out-of-state money that seeks to make our court deferent to the legislature and to the executive branch. Yeah. And brothers and sisters, on April 5, we will vote on whether we want an independent judiciary with integrity or whether we want our judiciary to be an extension of the executive and legislative branches of government. And if it is, then we no longer have shared governance in Wisconsin. We no longer have fair governance in Wisconsin. We no longer have even the bare outlines of a functional democracy in Wisconsin. We have an elected judiciary for a reason in Wisconsin. It is because we believe the people should have the power to name their judges, not influenced by out-of-state money, not influenced by elites, not influenced by business and corporations. The people themselves ought to be able to choose their judges, and those judges owe a moral responsibility to the people to judge each case in the interest of individual human beings, not corporations, because corporations aren't people, in the interest of communities, in the interest of society itself. This is a moral responsibility bigger than any politics. So I come to you today to introduce to you the two candidates for justice on the state Supreme Court. There are two candidates, both with interesting qualifications. Is Rebecca Bradley here? I can't explain, and I won't go any further than that. And I do believe there is another candidate who has thought it important enough to come out to a community event and meet with folks and say hello to them. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you will respectfully welcome Joanne Kloppenburg.
I may need the microphone because I've been talking a lot. And in fact, thank you so much, John. What a wonderful, difficult act to follow, but he sure does fire us up. And I've spent the last 2 days, I started in Madison, went up to Superior, stopped in Eau Claire, and then River Falls. And I'm so happy. This is the high point of this trip. Thank you so much. So many of you here were working hard with me in 2011 when our hearts were full of hope for a court that would work for all of us here in Wisconsin. And I'm here to tell you that 5 years later, that hope is within our grasp. I've got the endorsements of the wonderful Capital Times, which people think is kind of a liberal paper, and then the Janesville Gazette, which people think is a kind of conservative paper, and the La Crosse Tribune, And the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel couldn't quite come out and say, we endorse Joanne, but they say, vote for a balanced government, a balanced court, and then they list all the ways in which Rebecca Bradley is not, and then say, boy, maybe if I were a little older, but right now I represent the best hope for a balanced court and a balanced government in this state. And those endorsements are indicative of endorsements of so many different kinds of people coming together to form a winning coalition that will make change happen on April 5th. I'm honored to be endorsed, of course, by Judge Joe Donald, and I am honored to be endorsed by Senator Russ Feingold, and from groups like Voces de la Fronteras, the immigration rights group in Milwaukee, to the Wisconsin Professional Police Association, the largest law enforcement association in the state. I am endorsed by over 100 judges around the state, my opponent about 60, and the judges who know her work best. The Milwaukee County judges, I'm endorsed by more than twice as many Milwaukee County judges, including the current chief judge and the past chief judge, as my opponent. And when the Milwaukee Bar Association did a poll asking their members who's qualified, who's not qualified, of the respondents who had an opinion about me and Rebecca Bradley, 53% said she is not qualified for service on our Supreme Court. That just highlights how important this race is. It is about the future of our court. It's about what kind of court it ought to be, what kind of justice we should be electing to the court. I've been to all 72 counties, as you all know, many times over now, and I'm struck by people's shared hopes for what the court ought to be. You all know what the court ought to be. It ought to be a place where everybody gets a fair shake, where every justice approaches every case with an open mind, where the outcome of any case is not a foregone conclusion. It's a place where we should all be confident that justice is being done without fear or favor. And everywhere I go these last few months, people tell me they want all three branches of government to work for them. They want their local governments to be allowed to work for them, and they want the court to serve as the independent check and balance on the other political branches of government as it was designed to be. And that's why I'm running, because I'm unwilling to surrender our court to the partisan politics and the special interests that threaten to undermine its independence and integrity. And that's what distinguishes me from my opponent: independence, integrity, and experience. And as a supporter from Green Bay recently said, in the alternative, what distinguishes me is independence, maturity, and qualifications. Either way, there's a big difference between her and me. Both of us tell you we'll be independent and impartial when we get on the court. And the challenge for voters around the state is to determine who's going to deliver on that promise. And you can tell who will deliver by how we got where we are. Very briefly, you know how I got where I am. I was elected by the people of Wisconsin to the Court of Appeals in 2012. I have issued over 750 written appellate decisions in the 3.5 years since. I am the presiding judge in my district, which sits in Madison, but we get cases from all around the state. Before I was elected to the court, I served all of the people of Wisconsin as an Assistant Attorney General of the Department of Justice for 23 years. I worked under 4 attorneys general from both political parties, and I represented the interests of all of us in courts around the state in all different areas of law: constitutional law, appellate law, administrative law, all aspects of civil litigation. I supervised attorneys handling criminal and civil cases, and I prosecuted environmental cases, helping to keep our air and water clean. Before I went to law school, I was in the Peace Corps for 3 years in Botswana and Africa, planning and obtaining international financing for rural development projects around the country. Returned to the States, started the federal nutrition program for women, infants, and children in 2 poor rural counties in upstate New York. Moved to Madison in 1985, where raised my family, lived in the same house, raised our 3 kids ever since. I started law school right away with the 2 oldest of those kids, 3 years and 6 months at the time. I paid my tuition by teaching legal writing. I interned for Justice Shirley Abrahamson, I graduated with honors and awards, clerked for Chief Judge Barbara Crabb at the federal court for a year before joining the Department of Justice. I chose the law because I value its power and its potential to be a force for positive change. I chose to work at the Department of Justice for the opportunity to work on cases that would have direct and positive impacts on all of our lives. I chose to run for the Court of Appeals and to run for the Supreme Court, to stand up to the partisan politics and special interests that have no place on our court, and to be the candidate you can count on to bring independence and integrity to our court. You get the drift. I volunteered a lot. I won't bore you with the details, but the differences between how I got where I am and how my opponent, Rebecca Bradley, got where she is could not be clearer. Appointed 3 times to 3 judgeships in 3 years by Governor Walker. First, he appoints her to the Milwaukee County Circuit Court. She's in Children's Court for 2.5 years. He then appoints her to the Court of Appeals last May. And just 5 months later, he makes the very political decision to appoint her as an announced candidate for an open seat on the Supreme Court. That fast-track series of appointments indicates it was politics, not qualifications, that got her onto the court. She has a very partisan background, and she's brought it with her into this campaign and onto the court. She was a member of the Republican National Lawyers Association, a member of the very extremely conservative Ideological Federalist Society, and the Republican Party has paid about $60,000 directly to her campaign in what's supposed to be a nonpartisan race for a nonpartisan judiciary. And then we all know, a couple weeks ago, she leaves in the middle of oral argument and walks over to give a campaign speech to Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce, a deep money special interest group with very close ties to Governor Scott Walker. As a supporter of hers wrote to the governor, she can expect to receive the strong support of conservatives. She has paid her dues. That will not be ignored. Paying your dues to any political or ideological cause is not a qualification for service on our Supreme Court. She was caught on tape saying her friends were about to run ads for her back in 2013 when she had to run after her first appointment to the Milwaukee County Circuit Court. This was when that kind of coordination was illegal. And sure enough, her friends, the Club for Growth, put $167,000 to help her win a very tight race. We know her friends have put in over $2 million worth of ads supporting her attacking me in this race. When groups like that don't have the facts, they make things up. And the facts, we all know what the facts are. The facts are that I have a proven track record as an independent, fair, impartial, thoughtful, and principled appellate court judge. I have a nonpartisan background. I have superior judicial and legal qualifications, and I have been standing up for all of the people of Wisconsin my entire career. My opponent simply has not done any of those things. And thanks to you, I'm not afraid of what the special interests are trying to do in this campaign. I've been standing up to the special interests my entire career, and you all are coming together with me to reject partisan politics and politics as usual that don't belong on our court, and special interests that want the court to work for them, not to work for us, the people of Wisconsin. We need to all come together like we did in 2011, but things are different now. Things are different in a number of really exciting and positive ways. One of the biggest ways is, not you all, but a lot of other people in Wisconsin were willing to give Governor Walker the benefit of the doubt back then. He'd just been elected. But now people get that his policies are not working for them. On Halloween, I was in Phillips in Price County, way up north, and a Koch brothers owned factory closed that Saturday. 65 jobs gone, a huge hit in a tiny community. 2 months later, I was in Rhinelander. Caterpillar announced it was moving to Mexico. Over 200 jobs gone in Rhinelander. People up north were telling us we like to hunt, we like to fish, we like to build things. And Governor Walker's agenda and his policies are not working for us anymore. Another thing that's different is I was running against an entrenched incumbent back then. Justice Prosser had been on the court for 10 years. This time, I'm running against a person who was just appointed as a supporter in River Falls says, that I is not for incumbent, it's for interloper. And we're going to keep her as an interloper. Right? Another difference is that people get what the Supreme Court does is important. It's not an abstract institution anymore. Deciding cases on voting restrictions that could disenfranchise eligible elderly voters, voters of color, voters with disabilities, cases that decide the rights of workers to organize, cases that decide transparency in our government and in our elections. They get that what the Supreme Court does has a real and direct impact on our lives and our communities and our state. And lastly, they get that who is on the court makes a difference. We've all gotten to know a little bit about the personalities on our court in the last 5 years, for better or worse. And people around the state get that who we elect to be a justice makes a big difference. So for all those reasons, people like you are coming together around the state for independence and integrity, things I've been standing for my entire career. People are coming together for a justice who's qualified to serve on our Supreme Court. I've got 750 decisions there showing I'm an independent and fair and impartial appellate court judge. People are coming together around the state for a court that works as it should, as an independent check and balance on the other branches of government, and as a place where everyone gets a fair shake. For over 26 years, I've stood up for all of the people of Wisconsin. I would be honored to have your support, your vote, your hard work, your energy once again, so that I can continue to do just that as a justice on our Supreme Court. Thank you so much.
Very much, Joanne.